I am Savvy Mike, and this is I Am Savvy Mike TV. And well, when I heard a few years ago that they were making a movie called Michael, I was wondering why nobody hit me up to see how this script is. Because if they're going to make a movie based off my life, then well, I need to be involved, right? No, it wasn't about me. It was about Michael Jackson. Shucks. Directed by Anton Fuqua, starring Jafar Jackson, Michael Jackson's nephew. Also with Colman Domingo, Nia Long, and Miles Teller. Appears in a few scenes, I'll say that much. He's not really in the movie, but he's around, I guess. And this is, I guess, a part one to a part two of Michael Jackson's life and story being told on the big screen. Now, everybody has given their opinion on this movie. Everybody from this person to that person. People you didn't think you would hear movie opinions from gave opinions on this Michael Jackson movie. And well, it's because it's Michael Jackson. He's the biggest and greatest pop star of all time. Nobody has surpassed this man as far as aura goes, as far as music goes, as far as talent goes. The only one to ever really truly come close was Chris Brown, but then his career took a detour. And unlike Michael, by the time Michael Jackson's career was starting to take some weird detours, he was already set as who he was. You know, Chris Brown was still kind of getting there, and then boom, what happened. But that's neither here nor there. We're here to talk about this movie, and as you can see, yeah, I busted this out just for this review. Busted it out just for this here Thriller CD. I'm, of course, like everyone, a huge Michael Jackson fan. Grew up on his music videos, and also grew up being told about his life and who he was. And while I was still alive before he had passed away, I think he passed away in like 2008, 2009, I believe. I was still around. I was born in 96. I was like about 13, maybe 12 years old when Michael Jackson passed away. But during that time frame, learned everything I need to learn about him due to the fact that my mom, huge Michael Jackson fan, while my grandmother is a huge Prince fan. Ain't that ironic? And while Prince isn't in this movie, even though him and Michael's beef is well publicized, and them trying to work together, it just, you know. And there's a mention of Prince in this movie. At some point, Michael Jackson's on the pool like, yeah, I gotta get the ideas for songs from God before he gives them all to Prince. A little quick line. That's about it. That's about it. But while we wanted a movie that was about Michael Jackson and about his story, and while Joe Jackson and the Jackson 5 are a big part of that, don't get me wrong, one of the shortcomings of this movie, I'm not gonna lie, and while I was thoroughly entertained, I will say that I will start with some positives. I do think Jafar Jackson did an amazing job playing his uncle Michael Jackson. There was even a certain point, like, he looked just like him. It was weird. Like, it was a scene where Colman Domingo was talking to him in the room and at the door, and he was like, it was a side profile. And that's why I'm like, did they CGI this up? Like, because that looks just like Michael Jackson. So I don't know. But either way, outside of that scene, every other scene of Jafar Jackson embodying and portraying his uncle, he did a great job. He did an amazing job. I thought he really executed it well and really brung to the table what needed to be brought. Now, while you're never gonna really, be able to copy Michael's aura in a sense, like, you don't get that aura feel from him. Like, it's not Michael Jackson on the screen right now because, well, it's not him. But at the end of the day, like I said, as an embodiment goes, he did a great job. Colman Domingo, excellent. Killed it as Joe Jackson. While I do prefer the father from the American Dream story, and we'll get into that in a minute. I think he did a great job, but that's way longer. I think Colman Domingo did a great job kind of playing our antagonist in this movie, as far as the one that's not really keeping Michael down necessarily, but still trying to keep himself heavily involved in his career and control what he does. So Colman Domingo, great job playing Joe Jackson. And everybody else did good too. Nia Long, I thought she did well for what she was doing in the movie. I thought Miles Teller did well for what he did as well. And the musical scenes were awesome. I mean, it's Michael. Come on now, it's Michael Jackson. Of course, the music's fucking amazing. You know what I mean? Now, I didn't get enough of it, in my opinion. When we get the Thriller segment, it's really short. You get the Beat It segment, it's really short. You know, I didn't get enough of it. Honestly, the only real full song that was played was some of the Jackson 5 songs, and Bad by the end. Like that was the only full Michael Jackson song that was played. And then this movie, in a sense, does still feel like a concert film, which is kind of crazy. Like it feels like a concert film, but the only full song played at the end of it was Bad. And I guess the one where he did the final tour with the Jackson 5, I think that was a full song. But outside of that, it was no other real, like I said, it was just segments. Thriller was a segment. Beat It was a segment. It wasn't really fleshed out. And that kind of goes into my issues with this movie. While, like I said, I was thoroughly entertained for sure. It's just one, I've seen American Dream. Jackson's The American Dream. I know this story. And so I think what I wanted from this movie, at least from a part one, and at least at this time frame and time span of Michael Jackson's life, there's a lot more interesting stories to tell just about Michael in general. Like, forget his family. Like, yeah, his family was around and they were there, and yeah, Joe Jackson was a hindrance up until a certain point, but still, even while all that's going on in the background, there's still a story about him making Thriller that we really don't get. It's not fleshed out. It's just, oh, here's this, here's that, and then we move on. And it's just like, that's what this movie should have been. This movie should have been about him making the greatest album of all time, selling and content wise. Like, what are we doing? Why do we just leave that on the floor? And then to see all of the one thing I already knew was before Quincy Jones died, he told Michael's whole life story, like the dirty, dark, not so perfect parts about, like he let us know who Michael was as an actual, and Michael Jackson was on bullshit. If we could be completely honest, he was on straight bullshit. Like, while he was still him, he was on bullshit. But we don't get that. We get a portrayal that feels like it's coming from the point of view of his brothers, of his family, and not necessarily of who he was, in a sense. And in a lot of ways, I kept coming away with the fact of, wow, this movie is definitely shot by Antoine Fuqua. It doesn't necessarily feel like it was directed by him. And then to see reports come out that, yeah, the last year of this being in post-production and being filmed, he had nothing to do with any of it. Like, he was done after a while ago. And so that a lot of that comes into question too. Maybe he felt like he wasn't making the movie that he signed on to make, and it just turned into something that I guess the producers and the family wanted it to be. And unfortunately, what we get is a glorified concert film that makes Joe Jackson the villain and talks more about Michael Jackson growing up in this family environment, trying to become who he is, instead of just focusing on him doing what he did to break out of that anyways. At a certain point, Joe couldn't do nothing about it. Like, once he got some cojones and said, I'm done, it was finished. And from all the stories that Quincy Jones was telling, Michael had got some cojones at some point. He got some balls at some point to go, hey, Joe, leave me the fuck alone. I'm him. So regardless of it, I feel like it was a lot left on the table. And in turn, what it made them do was make a movie that is basically a shorter version of An American Dream. I would just advise people to go look at that. If like it's longer, yeah, but it's way more fleshed out. Like, they actually take time into the process of making the music and the family aspect of it all. Like, it actually all gets fleshed out, and it isn't just this highlight reel in a sense. Like, while yes, it showed how abusive Joe was, and it showed how controlling he could be, it never really fleshed it out. While it showed Bubbles and the monkey, and it showed Michael Jackson going and visiting kids all the time, and having this connection with the youth and having this connection to Peter Pan and whatnot. Like, while it showed all of that, it never truly like just fleshed it out. And yeah, you could say, well, Michael, that at that point the movie's 3 hours long. It's Michael fucking Jackson. he can get a 3-hour epic. What are we doing? If a nigga can make a movie called The Brutalist and make it 3.5 hours, star Adrian Brody about some bullshit, yeah, give me a 3-hour, 245-hour Michael Jackson epic. If that's what it takes, if that's how long it gotta be, then so be it. But you can tell it was a lot on the cutting room floor. A lot, and you could see the changes they had to make. Of course, they had to reshoot the third act because it was involving things that weren't necessarily like figured out legally. So you could see how this became a concert film. Like, I kind of understand with everything and knowing everything that happened behind the scenes, how this became the film that we got. But it still like just kind of bothers me that it isn't the film that it should have been. And yeah. Like I said, I wanted more focus on Michael and his story. Like, this is about him. It's literally called Michael. I don't necessarily need to continue to see the family drama and the family dynamics. Like, no, this movie should have been about, the Jackson 5 stuff, cool. Let's do that for about 30 minutes. The next 2 hours should have been about Michael and Quincy making Thriller. That should have been the movie. That should have been the movie. That's it. At some point, we could come back around to the Victory Tour and all that, and him and the hair thing and whatnot. At some point, we come. But it's other things that we missed out on too. Like it's during this time span. Didn't he perform in Africa and do the We Are the World stuff? Like, what? It was so much that we could have done that honestly, I would have took over all the scenes with Michael sitting with his mom watching a movie. You know what I mean? Of all the moments of Joe Jackson showing he's controlling and what, I would have much rather took other things about Michael's life that we already know than telling us something that we already know and just being like, nah, this is what the movie's gonna be about. Either way, thoroughly entertained though. I was. Not gonna lie, I did enjoy this glorified concert film, but hey, it's Michael Jackson. What can you say? Overall, I'm gonna still give it a fire and give it a 3 out of 5 salves. That's where I'm landing. Wow. Yes, it does have its flaws. It doesn't really flesh out the seeds that it plants, and it just tells you, wait for the next movie, I guess. But what about this movie? Like, this movie just was a glorified concert film mixed with the American Dream Jackson 5 story, and we could have just, watched that again. Because that wasn't bad. Terrence Howard's in that as one of the Jackson 5 brothers. Good miniseries. You should watch it. If you watch this movie and want all that family stuff that was, if you want that to really be fleshed out, go watch An American Dream. It's not bad at all. Either way, this was enjoyable though, but we're talking about Michael Jackson. This should be peak. This should be a masterpiece. This should be an epic tale of epic proportions because the man that we're talking about was epic. So yeah, that's why this is disappointing that this wasn't good or as good as it was supposed to be. Like I said, still thoroughly entertained, but yeah, could tell a lot was left on the cutting room floor. Anyways, let me know what you think in the comments below. As always, I'm Savvy Mike, and this is Savvy Reviews. Peace.